Thank you for tuning in, whoever is tuning in. This is a year-end Nachi free thank you special live stream, and I'm already fucking this up. I had something else planned to say, but fuck it, who cares? I can't believe I have yet to break 1,000 subs, but hopefully this headdress will get me some new subs tonight. But no, seriously, I wanted to say thank you, especially to the patrons, all 3 of them, or 2. Now I'm down to 2, but hey, at least it's 2. Okay, thank you. The almost 1,000 subscribers, and of course, all the viewers that come and go. I thank you all for giving me a reason to live and to drink out of my skull mug or my skull glass, whatever. And yes, I'm gonna check now to see who's actually tuning in. Hopefully it's the regulars, and I'm gonna be inviting people in tonight. Fuck it, tonight's gonna be one of those random nights where anything goes. Though if there's one thing I did want to talk about was the movie Coco by Disney. Oh my God, that movie is fucking amazing. Amazing. This is to Coco, and the whole thing with the guitar also. This is dedicated to Coco. That movie is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. I was in awe, in a state of awe from beginning to end. And not just because of the graphics. The graphics were amazing. But it's the storytelling, and especially because of this book, Story by Robert McKee. For any wannabe writers out there, you have to read this book. And if you could read this book and still catch the movies still catch Coco while it's in the theaters, highly recommend it. You're going to see that movie hits all the fucking the great storytelling points that every writer should know. All the twists, the way it sows the seeds for the antagonist that you don't even realize that guy's going to be the antagonist. Oh my God, it's awesome. I don't want to give it away. But great moral arc even. I mean, everything about the movie. The storyline, the superficial storyline that you see in the movie with the little kid who wants to play guitar and his music is just in his bones, in his veins, and he has to play music. And I don't want to give away too much of the plot line, but in other words, when you try to craft a really good story, there's a story that even a child could follow. Okay, and the child will relate to the little protagonist in the movie, which is the little kid with the guitar. But the underlying story, the great theme between family and individuality, between collectivism and individualism, between what's really valuable in life, your ego or your family. I cannot recommend this movie enough. And now it's time to check who's watching. As usual, I don't have my little... Let me entertain you. In the meantime, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to screen share. And I'm going to have Coco playing for you. I know that this is definitely not going to be fucking monetized because I'm actually going to play Coco.
It's you! You're gonna get me in trouble, Daddy! Someone can hear me! I wish someone wanted to hear me. Other than you. I know I'm not supposed to love music. No music! No music! But my great-grandma Coco's father was the greatest musician of all time. Papa Ernesto de la Cruz. One day, he left with his guitar and never returned. No, my family thinks music is a curse. Great-great-grandfather? None of them understand me. I'm supposed to play music.
All right, who's in there?
I'm sorry. What's going on? I'm just dreaming.
Do you mind?
Welcome to the land of the dead. Stop and clean up. You gotta stay with me, boy. This isn't a dreamland. You're all really out there. Agents at the Department of Family Reunions are available to assist you.
Please be on the lookout for a living boy.
Miguel, you're here.
We're your family, mijo.
I know your great-great-grandpa. I'll get you to him. What are you doing?
I'm walking like a skeleton.
No, skeletons don't walk like that.
It's how you walk.
No, I don't. When there's no one left in the living world who remembers you, you disappear from this world.
But you can change that.
We gotta find my great-great-grandpa.
You gotta do it by sunrise.
What happens at sunrise?
You'll be stuck here forever.
What? Ugh.
I'm a big fan.
Never forget how much your family loves you. It's almost sunrise.
One cannot deny who one is meant to be.
That's you. I am terribly allergic.
But Dante doesn't have any hair.
And I don't have a nose. And yet, here we are.
Awesome! I highly recommend that movie. And so, oh shit, did I lose myself there? All right, who cares? By the way, I'm not only recommending this movie because of the Hispanic storytelling, which, by the way, here's another interesting thing. This is a Mexican folklore, not Cuban. Yeah, my family's Cuban, even though I was born in Spain. But I still consider myself American, period. Right? But it was interesting. I never realized how fucking whacked out the whole Dia de los Muertos is for Mexicans. I was about to say for fucking Mexicans, but it's bad enough this video is not going to be monetized. But I didn't realize that they believed in the Dia de los Muertos and what it represents to Mexicans, as opposed to like the way Cubans celebrate Catholicism, and because Mexicans and Cubans are basically Catholics, but they've got their own fucking syncretic. I think the word is syncretic. The way that we've mixed Catholicism with the other indigenous faiths and cultures. So for Mexicans, it was obviously, I believe, the Dia de los Muertos it's got to probably stem from Aztec culture. So it's Aztec and Catholicism all kind of wrapped into one. And it's bullshit. Sorry, there's no evidence that any of that shit happens, but who cares? It makes for an amazing storyline. For Cubans, it's different. For Cubans, we combined Catholicism with like African folklore, and that's where you get the Santeria and all that shit. And then for the witchcraft, it's called Brujeria. And almost every single Cuban believes that shit. Look, as a matter of fact, one of my little bracelets that I usually wear just to freak my family out is this one. It's a little red and black one. And it's from the saint called El Egua. And I was thinking of buying the statue and having it here in the house just to freak out my relatives when they come. They're like, oh, God, I thought you were atheist. Because when they see me wearing this bracelet, they're always like, te hiciste un trabajito. And like they have respect, and it's amazing to see. It's amazing to see that people believe this bullshit. But that bullshit has been transmogrified. I don't know if I'm even using that word right, but I really like the way it sounds. That bullshit has been set on the big screen in Coco by Disney, which, by the way, I'm all over the place, I know. By Disney in the most beautiful way. And the reason why I got sidetracked is because that's right. For Christmas, my wife bought me a life book of Walt Disney, which I think I'm going to probably run off and get it and talk about it later on if I see that anybody's actually watching, and I'm going to start inviting people on over. So hold on a second. Let me see. Sorry, I know this is probably why I don't have 1,000 subscribers. I don't know how to run this shit. And I hope I'm still actually, oh, there we go. All right, so the year end, let's see, mute this shit. 3 people watching now. Ernest, as usual, Matt, and I guess me. I guess we're the only ones watching this. Here, let me put out. I'm gonna put out the link so you guys can keep me busy here. I'm gonna invite people. Thank you, Ernest. You're invited in. If you guys want to come in. And if you don't, that's fine too. I want to see if I can handle this. I want to see if I can just sit here and shoot the shit for as long as I can. But no more than an hour. I think I really don't have that much to say to the world. I could have waxed romantic about Coco. Actually, you know what? I think I will. I'm going to wax romantic about Coco and about Walt Disney as soon as somebody comes on, so I can go get that little book from Disney. Because there's something that I really want to talk about Coco that I know nobody's going to get. No one's going to get this from Coco. Let's see who else wants to jump in here. Been a while since I've seen a good Disney movie. Maybe I'll watch it this weekend. I watch it as soon as it's going to be gone. And if I'm not mistaken, they have a 3D version of the movie, which I highly recommend. Oh, fuck, my cat wants to get in on this too now. Hold on a second. You know what? I'm going to give it away right now. Fuck it. Not that many people watching. If you happen to be watching this stream later on, this is going to be fucking spoiler alert. Okay? I'm not going to totally give away the ending of Coco. But needless to say, the antagonist, the ultimate antagonist in the end, if you watch the movie, tell me if that does not remind you of Fidel Castro. Yes, that fucking piece of shit. The way that this character manages to just fucking deceive everybody. Everybody fucking loves this guy. Everybody fucking thinks this guy's great, man. Everybody thinks this guy's fucking awesome. Until you find out what a fucking piece of shit he really is. And they show it in the movie, and then that's the sad thing. It's just, the evil villain. And it's a shame that little kids will not understand that that's how a lot of politicians work. I hope it somehow just what's the word I was looking for? It just seeds into their, I guess seeds? I don't know. Sears into their brain that lesson of this antagonist who beguiles you, of course, like all antagonists do. They beguile you. Which is not what I'm trying to do, by the way. Hey, look, there's only one. I'll tell you what my ulterior motive is, okay? My ulterior motive is to sell T-shirts, all right? To sell T-shirts of my paintings. Either or. If you can't afford the original, at least you can get the T-shirt, okay? And the links are down below. And that's what I'm after. Making a living off my art with my cat and my wife. And see, Kitty, Nachi, can you send me the link via a Twitter? Sure. Hold on a second. Sorry, man. I'm not really checking the. Whoops. No, she's gone. Let me do this via Twitter. Okay, Ernest, it's there in your Twitter. Jump on in when you like. And so that was the thing about Coco, that and it's a shame. Like the very person who recommended I watch that movie was a nephew of mine who actually grew up in Cuba, and he's tired of hearing me talk shit about Castro. He's like, dude, you didn't grow up there. You don't fucking know what it's like. Okay. But my nephew hates Fidel Castro too. It's not like he likes him. But there's an interesting, talking about cultural things. It is interesting to see the vast difference, the chasm between the Cubans in Cuba and the Cubans over here in Miami, and especially the ones who aren't Cuban like me. But we've taken on the mantle almost like, and fuck it, I'm going to talk about this. I think these things you need to say. Almost like the young generation of Black Americans who feel like they have to take on the mantle of the civil rights movement and stuff, even though, come on, I'm sorry, man, you're not living in Jim Crow America. It's not. Black Lives Matter is not the second coming of the civil rights movement. It's not. But I can sort of see, and yes, there is still racism. Trust me, there's more than enough people who I've met that are openly racist. Okay. It's not the same, but I kind of have that same anger. And for what happened to my parents, not my ancestors, not my great-great-grandparents, no, my mother and my father. And then to watch people, and I'm sorry, people like Black Lives Matter, when fucking Fidel Castro died, and people like fucking Tariq Nasheed, piece of shit. For you to go fucking, I was about to say you people, but I know everyone's gonna fucking take that the wrong way. For anyone to still admire that fucking piece of shit. And that's why you have millions of people suffering. What's up, Ernest?
Us.
So I see you got a new picture there, or is your camera really slow?
No, I had to fix some shit here. My stuff's messed up. I've been reading Peruvian news for the last 4 days, and it's been burning me out.
And speaking of Hispanic culture and the different ones, Peruvian culture is so different from Cuban culture, so different from Mexican culture.
But I tell you this.
You know what this is? Did Moro murder as many people as I'm sure the guy from the fucking Senderos who even also fucking murdered?
Not even close. Look, Fujimori did some pretty nasty stuff, but he did a lot of good too. So it's for me, human rights in South America. I hate to say this, is somewhat of a subjective topic because it generally depends on the situation and or country and laws in place. So at the end of the day, what he did was absolutely despicable.
Right.
But he did stop a communist takeover of Peru, and he did capture Abimael Guzman, which is pretty good. He was also incredibly corrupt, which, is pretty part and parcel with South America. But he's 79 years old. He's not going to be overthrowing governments and taking power again anytime soon. I'm pretty sure. The man can barely get out of bed. So I just feel bad that his chief of security and the worst terrorists in South America, next to Carlos the Jackal, are they're the only ones left in the cell now. So they got to share conversation, I guess, or something. It's going to be a little bit less exciting in that prison cell from now on.
Oh. No, I would love to understand a little more about overall, like Latin American culture, from Central America on down. And it's radically different than what happened in North America, that's for sure. And again,
it is.
And I wondered, I've had this conversation with other people, and I know it has something to do with Spain being the colonizing force behind all of Hispanic America and England being the colonizing force of the United States and Canada. And I think it goes
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the real differences between, say, as someone who comes from, the oldest colony of the United Kingdom, Newfoundland, I'm a bit familiar with the topic. The difference between Spain and, say, England as a colonizing power was the sistema de castas, the casta system. And that was a ridiculously complex, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's a ridiculously complex system of, of levels of society. And it all had to do on your racial purity. If you were a peninsulare, like someone from Spain proper, you were the top of the totem pole. You could have been like the town idiot in Spain, and then you go to Mexico under the casta system, and you were higher up than the richest mestizo, or the richest Spaniard, or the richest Criollo. Because it was all divided up into classes, and of course the lowest was the Indian. And I was just reading an essay by a Peruvian theorist called Jose Marie Tagui, I think his name is. I can't pronounce half these names. I'm still working on it.
Right.
But it's 7 essays on the Peruvian reality, and he's a bit of a communist, but it's an interesting system to look into. But you see, like in North America, we didn't have the casta system to that extent. It wasn't so bad. It kind of spiraled out when America became, free of us, and then it just got all kind of slavey. But if they waited till like what 1830, they would have been fine. We would have had no more slavery, because that's when the British Empire said, we're done. We're not having any more slavery. And also Lincoln wouldn't have been shot, so that might have been a good thing.
Oh my God! Speaking of Lincoln getting shot, hey, what's up, Hellbound?
Hey, how's it going, Nachi?
Pretty good, man. You know Ernest, right? You guys know each other?
I don't think.
Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. I got an echo. Hold on. I'm so bad. Oops.
Well, at least we're not hearing an echo. I thought you guys had been on one of the streams together before. So.
I don't think so.
Oh, no? All right.
Nice to meet you, man.
What the hell's going on? Okay, there we go. So sorry. All right, sorry about that. Hey, how's it going, Ernest?
Not bad, man. Not bad. It's pretty damn cold up here.
Where you live?
You've probably never heard of this place, but I live in a place called Newfoundland. It's cold.
Oh, I've heard of Newfoundland. Newfoundland.
Thank you. Everyone says Newfoundland, and I'm just like, listen, we're not Laps. We don't.
It's Foundland, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like, I've had so many of your fellow Americans come up here, and they're just like, "Oh, it's Newfoundland," and you guys live in houses? Wow, we really didn't know that.
But apparently, you guys got internet and electricity, so that's good.
We just got that, actually. Yeah, they just brought it in. That
they're shipping it in by
on this Wi-Fi thing.
And also, I got to ask Nachi, what the fuck are you wearing? The fuck is that?
I got it from a carnival in Rio de Janeiro.
Okay.
I went over there, and I had the whole costume.
Special carnival.
Mm-hmm.
Had the whole costume and everything, man. No, I was actually in, because every hotel, it was interesting. In Brazil, there's these major schools for the carnival. And for them, carnival is like fucking, imagine the Super Bowl and the Olympics all kind of rolled into one.
Yeah, they really go to town on it. Mm-hmm.
And so then
you haven't seen Holy Week in Lima.
Say what? I didn't hear you. What?
Holy Week in Lima is fucking awesome.
Is it in February also?
It's in June. Because when I went to Peru, I ended up running into it, and I caught the tail end of it, but it was pretty good. They had a mass in the main city square, and everyone's all dressed up in these guild outfits and stuff. It's pretty cool, and they had people making these flower art decorations and everything all on the pavement, and shit, it was good. And then they had these on these little, because the roads in Lima are tiny as shit, especially in the old districts, because they're like those old traditional horse trail kind of things, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they got all these bands. They got about 15, 20 different marching bands, and guys dressed up and guys and girls dressed up in all these outfits. Almost puts Rio to shame, but I lost my hearing for about 45 minutes after it, but it was worth it.
Yeah, those Rio de Janeiro girls, they're
oh my God. Yeah.
They got it in all the right places.
You haven't been to Lima, man.
And if they
I'm sure they got it all in all the right places there too.
No, and here's the thing. I'm a married man, and my wife is within earshot, so I got to be careful with what I say. What I was going to say is, if they don't have it in the right places, they'll have it surgically placed.
They have surgically put in the right places. No, what you're supposed to say, Nachi, is they've got really fantastic personalities.
Oh, of course.
Hashtag me too.
Flawless.
Good watch.
Flawless. Here's the interesting thing that I did not know. But until you get down there, you start getting these little details. A lot of the prize showgirls, like the ones who are on the main float, and they're like the pinnacles. Okay, they're like at the very top, and they're just perfect. They're almost all of their husbands are like famous, at least within Brazil. They're famous cosmetic surgeons, and their wives. At least this is the way it was explained to me. I don't know if things have changed. Their wives basically serve as their portfolios, pretty much. And dude, when you get close up to them, it's like amazing, dude. They're like, fuck it, perfect, it's amazing. Right. Like not a freckle, not a nothing, dude. You're just like, holy shit. They're like
there's
a
friend of mine who's from Brazil, and he told me this. He said, "You want to know what I love about Brazil?" I said, "What?" I said, he said, "The women are women, and the men are too."
Pretty much. I didn't run into that though. I didn't run into that problem, but you can see quite a few.
One of my friends did. One of my friends did by accident. Went down, thought he was going to get married to somebody, and I guess he didn't inspect.
He didn't check under the hood.
No, he didn't. It was a guy. It was a guy, and it was pretty bad for him. But me and my friends, we got him a little like those hemorrhoid donuts for when he got back, just to add to the burn. And he's never forgiven me for that one.
He thought it was an Audi and got an innie.
Was this a mail order bride or something? Was that one of these?
No, man. He just met her online, I guess, and chatted her up and thought she was a nice girl. And I thought it was a woman for a while too. And then I guess those surgeons are pretty darn good.
Yeah, you got to be careful. Man. I live in San Francisco, and there's a really large. There's even before it became really online and everywhere. There was a big, huge transvestite population, and a lot of them used to hook several blocks from where I lived. And so me and my friends, we would walk down the street, and we would see this girl up ahead. And we would get, all right, okay, what do you think? $5, is it a man or a woman? And the price would it would get higher the closer and closer we got. All right, $50, what do you think? All right, I'm going to change my mind. It's a dude. But yeah, I mean, they're really getting quite good at it, because usually you can tell by, used to be the hips, but now they've gotten hip surgery and all this other stuff. So now so now it can be by the Adam's apple. But I think I could be wrong on this.
They can shave it down.
Right. Yeah, there is a way that they can go in and have surgery on that. I mean, I don't mind. I mean, if somebody really wants to transition, I don't really care. But I think that you should, I mean, I don't know. I've never gone out with a transvestite, but I'm sure at some point they would tell you, you know what I mean? Like they would say, oh, by the way, I'm a dude. Or
yeah, by the way, when you ask me how it's hanging, I can answer that.
Right.
But no, like exactly. I mean,
you don't want to really answer actually. Which, by the way, speaking of by the way, wasn't there? It was like starting to become almost like a law, or they were talking about putting this into a law where transsexuals. I get confused between transsexuals, transgenders, and transvestites. Anyway, the ones, I guess it will be transgenders, that transgenders don't need to let you know that they still have a penis or something if you date.
I think that should be, I don't think that's in yet, but I mean, I think that's just common courtesy, because I mean, it really, if you tell someone right away, or at least, well into a relationship or two before anything, gets, physical, I just think it's good manners.
There was actually some instances where guys thought that they were, picking up a girl, and then they took him home, and it was a guy, and then the guy beat them up. So, especially in the trans, I'm just going to say trans community here, it was actually, you let the people know, because if you take them home and they find out that you're a dude, you might get beat up. So there was definitely a urge to be straight up with somebody and straightforward, even if they were hooking, and then the guy found out that, it was a guy, they could run the risk of being beaten up. So.
Well, I got to say this. I got to add my own story into this. My first night in Lima, I stayed at this hotel near the place called Plaza San Martin. It's a really nice area. But what they didn't bother to tell me in the TripAdvisor that just across the road was an unofficial bar that played very, very loud music at all hours of the night. Outside this bar was a bouncer. Bouncer was... You ever seen the movie Green Mile?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Imagine John Coffey with a bright pink mohawk, arms on him that could probably bend steel girders, a long blue dress, and a pair of knee-high boots. I'll never forget this image out of my head. And like, at least he tried to. I don't know. It was kind of dark, but I mean, he was built like a brick shithouse, as we say here. And I'm getting out of the car, and he's like, "Hey, lindo, come, Ben, dance. No, I will not dance with you, John Coffey. I'm not going to get torn in half. No." I went up them stairs, locked the door, and he's seen my window light go on and out, and he's shouting at me in Spanish, like, "Come on out and dance. Come on, don't make me wait. I want to dance." I was just like, "Oh, no." So next morning, I go downstairs, and the hotel guy was like, "Hey, somebody was looking for the white guy that came upstairs and left his number in the door." I was like, "He's going to come back tonight," he said. "Oh, okay. That's great to know. Give me 1 minute." I literally go upstairs, get all my stuff, and I went to a slightly more expensive hotel with a doorman, and I was just like, if anyone who is not a woman is looking for me, and I gave him the exact description of the guy, I was like, especially this guy, do not let them in. He's like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "I was staying at the hotel down the road." He's like, "Oh, yeah, okay. We get this a lot. Don't worry. Come on in."
Hey, I'm gonna be right back. I have to go and change my laundry out. I'll be right back.
Do what you gotta do, man. The Britishers here. Oh, come on, Brit. Come on in.
Oh, come on, man. Yes.
Mr. Nachi turned into some sort of Aztec priest. I terrible British accent, by the way, terrible. But no, actually, I'm not even sure. I got this from a Brazilian carnival, and like I was trying to explain before, it's interesting how the hotels are in league with the schools. So I guess the schools, the major samba schools, do these deals with the hotels that if you as a tourist you want to be in one of the carnivals, which by the way it's one of the parades, is, if I'm not mistaken, it's at least 4 days. I think it was like 4 days, and then depending on the price that you're willing to pay, you can get one of the major days, you can get one of the shittier days, and you can get one of the major costumes or one of the shittier costumes. And I was like, you know what, fuck it, dude. I mean, I'm only going to be in Brazil for Carnival once in my life, most likely, in my fucking 20s, no less. Fuck that. And it was cheap, too. Like, I got the expensive package, and that's privilege, okay? You want to talk about fucking privilege?
Hey, I know.
It's like $80. It was like $80, and I'm like, I got
what?
Yeah, dude, $80 got me the whole fucking costume, dude. Got me like a primo spot within the little thing. I came out on TV and everything, of course, with fucking like 100 other people and stuff. And it was just an amazing experience. And
there he is.
Huh? Haha, what up?
How are you doing?
Oh, here. How about you, man? How you been, dude?
Well, it's a rather ungodly time over here, but one tries one's best. So how is Mr. Nachi?
Britisher. You could be in Grimsby.
I could be where? Sorry?
You could be in Grimsby or Bognor Regis or some other dreadful place.
Who says I'm not?
Oh, goodness.
But then again, I mean,
Ernest? Anyway,
it could be much worse. I could be a resident of the United States of America. I mean, you know,
yes,
I could
here.
I could be inhabiting one of those god-forsaken states.
So how you been? How you been?
Well, you know, as I told Sophane recently, I've tried to commit suicide by turkey. I just ate and ate and ate, and you know, I've been seriously testing the elasticity of my stomach, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So just how much one can possibly cram in. So yes, I'm afraid I really pigged out over Christmas.
Oh no, and I know that you. I guess all Christians, regardless of Catholic, Protestant, whatever, everybody celebrates Christmas. You guys do it somewhat Charles Dickens style, but for you guys, Christmas Eve is just as big a deal as it is for us over here. The only difference
Boxing
is
Day.
Mummering. You got to go mummering.
On the European continent, it tends to be Christmas Eve. In Britain, it tends to be Christmas Day.
Oh, so it's Christmas Day that you're picking out?
Yes, I mean, Christmas Day tends to be the big day. That tends to be the day when the presents are exchanged and things like that. Whereas on the European continent, it tends to be Christmas Eve when that is done.
Yeah, they're still a bit backwards, though. So we must forgive them. But no,
they're just doing it all wrong.
Well, for people here in Newfoundland, we have Tibbs Eve, which is on the 23rd of December, which is it's pretty much the drunken version of everything. You just go out on Tibbs Eve, you consume vast amounts of terrible beer. One thing we did not inherit from our former British overlords was good beer making, unfortunately. But you get very drunk, you make poor life decisions, and then you are hungover for Christmas Eve and part of Christmas Day. And during that time, you are also asked to go mummering, which sounds slightly more illegal than it is. You pretty much wear a mask, and I think Nachi, I sent you a picture of a mummer. But you dress up in a mismatched outfit, and you wander over to people's houses, and they have to guess who you are, and if they don't guess right, they have to give you alcohol. So it turns out to be pretty fun. But I sent a little statuette to a friend of mine in New Jersey, and it didn't go very well because, unfortunately, the mummer had a white hood and a banjo. So it was completely unmistakable, though. He was kind of like, what is this? I was like, it's a mummer. He's like, what the heck? He's like, do you know what this is? I was like, yeah, it's a mummer. He's like, no, man, it's got a white hood and a banjo. I'm just like, push the button on his leg. I was like, it plays a song. He's like, yeah, I was wondering what that is. What kind of music is that? I was like, it's the mummer song. It's about getting drunk and going over to people's houses for free alcohol. He's like, so it's not I'm like, no, it's not. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. And he figured that one out pretty quick after.
So what do you guys? Sorry, go ahead, Nachi.
No, I was going to say, I'm looking for the picture of the mummer to show it, because this little toy in this country would probably be illegal.
Oh God, yes, it would. It would.
May I ask, what is a mummer?
Well, you're about to
yeah, it's what it is. We kind of stole it from certain British traditions, I believe. It was banned for a while too, because people used to dress up as mummers and beat each other up. But it's pretty much, you just get dressed up in mismatched clothing and that, and you try to disguise your weight, your if you're a man or a woman, and like I said, you venture over to your friends' houses, and they have to guess who you are, and because you dance around, you kind of cause a bit of a ruckus, in good humor, of course, and that's
you have to present to everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so there
you go. Yes.
I would have a gun if they came to my door. I'd be like,
surely that imagery must already have been used in some sort of horror movie.
Yeah, that's scary.
This has got sort of horror movie potential written all over it.
It sure does.
It does.
Combine it. So make the hood a little more dirty and whatever, and then combine it with a chainsaw and some mad cackle or something like that, and you're in horror film territory, aren't you?
Usually,
I'm surprised that Hollywood horror hasn't made some kind of a horror movie based around this.
Yes, the Colonial. That'll be what it's called, and it'll just be some drunken Newfoundlander stepping out and just saying, "How's you getting on?" before beating somebody to death with an accordion.
Now, but they have this tradition in some parts of England, don't they?
walking around with cowbells.
Classic mummers.
Actually, the cowbells look more like some Swiss tradition of some sort. You know, the Swiss are big into cowbells.
I could have sworn. Now, what do they call the people who do the antler dances?
The Morris dancers.
Oh, those are Morris dancers, right? Okay, so they're different from murmurs. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember there was an article some months ago that went round, and several people made videos on it on YouTube, whereby I think there's some claim that some Morris dancers were racist.
Oh,
because they kind of blacked up and wore black clothes and whatever. And of course, the claim kind of totally tripped over itself because it's a tradition that's about,
right,
300, 400, 500 years old or whatever. And the blacking up was actually so that they couldn't be recognized, because back then it was actually forbidden because it was seen as a form of begging and whatever.
Yeah, but in the defense of the article, is there anything in this entire world that is not racist?
No.
Yeah, I mean, everything rooted in some sort of one majority taking over another minority. Look at the one from my wife's native land. I'll tell you right now, really quick. The Zwarte Pieten, Netherlands. Let me see how you spell it.
Yeah, Black Peter.
Yeah. Zwarte Piets. There we go.
Yeah,
this, I was like, if this were here in the United States, forget it. Look at that. It's just straight up black.
Well, but then again, the European continent has long since also been infected with that. I mean, the Germans, for example, have
they're not happy.
They've had some very, very strange incidents. So I don't know what you call this kind of. It's frequently called a tea cake over here in Britain. It's a kind of marshmallow confection covered in chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of got a biscuit base, then you've got a bit of marshmallow on top, and then that's covered in chocolate. Now, that is in German known as a Moor's head.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
People immediately, so basically the social justice aficionados came along and said, well, this is racist. You can't do this. And, entire Germany is still utterly confused as to why is it actually racist? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's, obviously it's brown because it's chocolate. So it's the color of a Moor, so people called it a Moor's head. But it's in no way derogatory. So why is it racist? Always consider that, of course, you've got the hamburger, named after people from Hamburg. You've got the Berliner, which is a jam-filled donut, named after the people of Berlin. You've got a sausage called a Wiener, named after the city of Vienna. But so basically, if it refers to specific peoples from the white population, perfectly okay, we don't have a problem with it. The moment that it refers to anything that is black, it's racist, even though it's not derogatory. And nobody knows why. So lots of companies are totally confused as to what products they're allowed to advertise under what names, because they don't know whether they're being racist or not.
But everything
I agree. I mean, it's ridiculous to the point. I mean, you've seen it. It's to the point where it's like the OK symbol is racist. Milk is racist. Apparently, air conditioners are racist. I mean, it's gone to the extreme end of absurdity. I think in the beginning we were kind of like, yeah, well, we should be more culturally sensitive to this. Now it's like you hear about it, you just roll your eyes. You're like, okay, this is ridiculous.
I think it actually takes away from the real racism in the world, because we're all just panicking. And the funny thing is, there is a tradition in Iran where they have a black-faced individual as well, and he celebrates the Nowruz, the Persian New Year, and no one really seems to get angry about that one. No, he's a jolly little black-faced fellow who runs around and does silly things. He's kind of childlike, and they've never really complained about that one. But then again, you know, it is, like I said, it's not white people doing it. It's Iranians. So who I don't really know if we can classify them as well. They're Aryan in the traditional sense, not the weird.
Well, they're what do you call it? They're Indo-Germanic, aren't they? Yeah. I mean, that's the sort of overall umbrella race, all the way from India to, you know, to Western Europe, is strictly speaking a related racial group.
Sorry, I just saw this one. I don't know.
We're just watching Nachi surf the internet.
This one from Spain is pretty. It's even for me, the one in the Netherlands, because when I, you know, I've been with my wife now 13 years. The first time I went there, which was a Christmas, this was long before I even knew anything about Black Lives Matter, which I don't think Black Lives Matter was around back then. I even thought, wow, that's a little racist, considering especially that the Dutch, you know, gained a lot of their wealth by beginning the very slave trade that brought over slaves to the United States. So there is some tie to that. Plus, there's the whole thing with, how do you call it? It's a little confusing because the way it was originally explained to me was it's Sinterklaas and his little Slavias, like his little slaves on his little slave ship. But then when this started becoming like a big issue and people were like, no, what the fuck, and blah, 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 then all of a sudden the story changes. It's no longer Sinterklaas and his little slaves. It's his little helpers, and they happen to be black because they come down the chimney. So it is weird. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't blame black Dutch people from Curacao and stuff for having an issue with it, because I'm sure there's always those people who will, you know, there's always those people who will actually, you know, say, what do you call it? You know, they'll call him a Zwarte Piet or whatever, and it's not nice. You know what I mean?
What I would like to know is do we know of any caricatures of white people in black countries?
Well, all you have to do is look at what happens to the black albinos.
Oh yeah.
And you don't hear about that one. You don't hear about what happens. You don't hear that much. And
yeah,
not only that,
I saw a program once. I think it was Uganda or whatever. I mean, they are the ultimate outcasts.
Tanzania, I think, takes them. So, sorry to interrupt you, sir.
No problem.
In Tanzania, they take the albinos and chop them up into medicinal parts, because apparently you will be able to. It's like the rhino horn for the Chinese. Apparently, it's an aphrodisiac. Is ground up albinos.
You know, I mean, if they did make some caricature, like let's say, you know, about Irish or Germans or English or French or whatever, who would care? I mean, would we get upset about? I'm sure somebody would probably get their panties in a bunch about it. But for the most part, I wouldn't care. I'd be like, oh, that's funny.
It's an interesting one, that, because are you familiar with the movie Master and Commander?
Yes.
Do you, you know, in it there is a duel between the British Navy and a French ship with long guns. Mm-hmm. Actually, in the original Patrick O'Brian novel, that was an American ship. But for some reason, I think we can all guess what the reason is. It was amended to being a French ship for the purposes of a Hollywood movie, because one felt the Americans, being the bad guys, might not necessarily sell very well in US cinemas.
Oh, interesting.
Now, in that regard, the British, I mean, here it's almost become a meme. I mean, we quite enjoy the fact that the British, that, you know, the gentleman with a cut glass accent stroking a white cat is always the villain in so many things. You know, you've either got a Russian accent, a German accent, or a British accent.
Right.
And if you really want to be the supervillain, you best have a British accent, you know, so that Bruce Wayne, or whatever he's called, Bruce Willis, can throw you off the Nakatomi Plaza building, you know. But it's over here, that is actually, we don't have a problem with it. But I think many other countries kind of do as such. Sort of, there is an undercurrent, as in we don't really like being presented as the villains. Here, it's almost become a running joke, so we've become fine with it.
Can I?
But can we?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but before the subject change,
sure.
I think this is what happens. I think what happens is that white people, and believe me, I'm not going to start talking. I might sound like a social justice warrior now, but hear me out.
Oh.
I'll try to make it quick. I think what's happened is that since white people have been, for the most part, at the top of that food chain of, fucking civilization and conquering and all that, they've never, pretty much, they've had the power. And so they never were marginalized. I think what happened, like especially here in the United States, where blacks were marginalized and there was a need for some people to start speaking out for blacks. For example, with Martin Luther King, understandable, Malcolm X, even by all means necessary, I understand it. But then it just started almost becoming an industry after a while. And then you get the Al Sharpton, you get the Jesse Jacksons. And then that's what happens. I'm sure that during the 70s, it was still an issue. 80s, you could almost say, but yeah, by the 90s, it's not. I'm sorry. That's where if anybody's watching this video down the line, dude, you're making false equivalences with American history. By the way, for anybody who wants to take me up on this shit, who might be watching this, I'm always assuming that some activist is going to be watching this down the line. There's a great debate between Ta-Nehisi Coates and John McWhorter on Blogging Heads TV. Watch it between these two, and how John McWhorter pretty much takes Ta-Nehisi Coates to task and points out that, look, I think what's happening with a lot of young Black Americans now of your generation is you're more swept up with indignant emotions that you get, as opposed to the real issues and policy making and everything that's happened. And a lot of people are, and he pointed this out beautifully. I mean, I was about to say very eloquently, and I'm afraid somebody's gonna be like, "Oh my God, you see what you're saying? That he's eloquent," whatever, like they do with Barack Obama. Bottom line is that he pointed out that there's too many people, many of modern Black activists, they're just consuming all these books from the 1960s. By their professors, and a lot of times white professors. And the problem is that it becomes like a mass hysteria, because unfortunately the majority of people don't think for themselves. The majority of people don't go through like this. They don't, get on fucking these live streams where only 7 people are watching now and talk about this shit with other people.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I agree with you, Nachi. I think that first of all, we should never ever cover up history, and that's one of the reasons why I get so pissed off when they start tearing down statues in Charlottesville. It's like, no, we need to be aware of our history, and also, I mean, the whole Civil War thing. I mean, that's a whole. Hold on one second. That's a whole. Sorry, but that's okay. But yeah, we should. I agree. There is elements of racism that still exist. But it's on an individual level, and I think that needs to be addressed. But there's a lot of people who are just they're farting, they're walking around farting on issues that have absolutely no impact upon them, and that's what really pisses me off. Stuff like this is just it's ridiculous. It's like, why are you upset about that? You should be upset about like the current education system in your neighborhood. You should be concerned about the crime rate in your neighborhood. You should be concerned about entry-level jobs in your neighborhood. There's a lot of stuff in your community you could be spending this energy on, rather than getting upset about some person on YouTube making the OK symbol.
No, and then here's the reason why is because there's money to be made there. Because let's face it, if I'm not mistaken, Black Lives Matter they have gotten donations in the millions. It becomes
you're right
itself. That's the thing.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of unions, there's a lot of education, there's a lot of money involved in community activism, and I agree with you. I think it has become an industry, and so they always sort of need to keep creating an evil villain to attack, because they have all these people coming out of school.
Mm-hmm. Just really quick, let me just interject this really quick, because Matt in the chat was talking about how whites have gone through this as well, and he was saying that Whites aren't a monolith. Irish were treated very poorly back in the day in America. My grandfather's family actually changed their last name to sound less Irish, to just Dowd. Mm-hmm. It's happened to every fucking group of people at one point or another has been stepped on. The British, for all their imperialism and all that, you had the fucking lower class of the British that Charles Dickens fucking wrote about in all his books. And Karl Marx felt the need to go and defend and all that. So,
when you go back in British history, there's a beautiful one in Sir Walter Scott's Ivanhoe, in which he kind of explains the origins of certain words. Because obviously English is kind of an amalgam between Anglo-Saxon English and Norman French, and for example, cow is a good old-fashioned Anglo-Saxon word, because it would be the Anglo-Saxon cowherd who has to look after the beast. But beef is what the Norman lord in the castle would refer to the meat as once it is served to him, because it would be bœuf. And the same thing with English pig, which becomes pork, and again, mutton, which is mouton, which is again French. So you can actually see in the English language, you have the etymology of what was once the language of the conquerors and the conquered on this very island itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, history is filled with people who have been conquered and conquered. Yeah, sure, I'd like to. Well, actually, I wouldn't like to, but I mean, it's just everybody's been conquering other people, and the older I get, the more forgiving I become of our ancestors. Somebody had to rise to the top. And I think that if it wasn't our ancestors, it would have been somebody else. And to look back on that and kind of like judge them from our vantage point is really, it's absurd. It's ridiculous. We definitely need to learn from the past.
You cannot judge the people of the past by the standards of today. That's just
unless you're Jeremy Corbyn.
That's just an absolute no-go.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I made a video about this once, which was obviously deliberately provocative, and it brought various people out of the bushes,
which is easy to do nowadays.
Very much so. It was about what I refer to as the necessity of slavery. That if you actually would have taken away all the slaves in the past, you would have basically reduced all the populations to basically subsistence farmers. So all the people who actually, were the great thinkers, the Aristotles and whatever of that age, they would have been too busy ploughing their own fields in order to try and feed themselves.
Yeah, so, but at least in America, slavery was actually a very small percentage of the people who actually were actually slave owners.
Oh yes, in the southern states, it was a very small percentage of very rich landowners who actually owned all those slaves. Yes,
right.
But I mean, like if you hear people talk about it, you would swear to God that like every inbred Southerner, no offense to all the Southerners, but I mean every bog standard flag waving Southerner owned a slave or six. And that's the way they portrayed it. I mean, you go up here, and people, they buy into it. I mean, the social justice is starting to spread to this island, which makes me quite sad, because this is the oldest colony and also the last bastion of I consider to be relative Britishness in North America. This is the last bastion, as it were. Minus St. John's, which is full of Irishmen, but we don't hold that against them anymore. The beer is just too good. It's the only place in Newfoundland with good alcohol. But I digress. And lately here now we've had a group called the Mi'kmaq. They're an Aboriginal tribe who are saying this is traditional land. But the funny thing is, Newfoundland was actually originally inhabited by a people called the Beothuk. and who fought the Vikings in Lance Meadows in northern Newfoundland in 1000 AD, which is quite an interesting story. But long story short, a lot of the Mi'kmaq here have French-sounding last names because they came from Nova Scotia, which before my ancestors came on over and helped take it, was French. And the French had a problem with the Beothuk raiding their settlements. So, of course, as you know, white people aren't really good at running around woods and hunting people down. We just don't have that particular skill. That's why we've subletted it or contracted it to other people who were much better at hunting people for us. So they got these Mi'kmaq fellows, and they said, hey, listen, how about you pop on over here and help us chase down these naughty chaps, and we'll give you all the land as long as you promise not to raid us. And then we wiped everyone out. That and smallpox. So it was a... And now they're going around, and I went to a museum around here, and they're saying, listen, we've always been friends, we've been here before Columbus. And one time I got in a lot of trouble for this, because I said to them, I said, well, where are your pre-Columbus settlements? We don't seem to see any. All we hear is like this one village that was settled in, what was it, 1826? That's a bit late for Columbus, unless he was taking his bloody time, like most Italians. And they kicked me out of the museum because I questioned the facts, even though I looked at some university documents which literally say, and it's just like, French ship delivers Mi'kmaq Indians from Cape Breton, 1726. And I'm allowed to say these things because my mother's family were French and are also part native, which makes sense because the French are very lustful people, unlike my prudent British ancestors. So I'm allowed. I can get away with playing that card.
Well, with the mention of slavery before, it just brought to mind, when someone said it sounded as if almost sort of everybody had a slave in the southern states or whatever. I was reminded of ancient Rome, where it is said that actually quite a lot of not the proletarii, the poorest of the poor, but quite a lot of the average population would have a slave or two. Mm-hmm. And it just brought to mind this little sort of anecdote that I once heard of Emperor Hadrian. The emperors, rich and powerful as they were, once in a while like to kind of portray themselves as men of the people, if you know what I mean. So it would kind of mix and mingle. So Emperor Hadrian once in a while would turn up at the public baths in order to kind of be seen to be kind of slumming it with the ordinary folk, if you know what I mean. And he walked in, and obviously he came in with his entourage in order to bathe. And there in one of the pools, he saw a man who was kind of in the pool, but he was kind of rubbing himself with his back against the side of the pool. So he kind of turned to one of his advisors and he said, "What's that man doing?" And he said, "Oh, Your Majesty, he doesn't have a slave to rub his back. Yeah. So he just must do it against the side of the pool." And Hadrian just basically shook his head and went, "Give that man a slave." So yeah. the next time he came back to the public pools, there were 24 people all in the pool, frantically rubbing their backs against the side of the pool. And he said, "Slaves for everybody. What are these people doing?" And the advisor kind of rolled his eyes and went, "Well, Your Majesty, they don't have anybody to rub their back." And Hadrian just looked at them and went, "Tell them to rub each other's backs."
I thought he would pull like like an Oprah thing there. Everyone gets one. You get a slave, and you get a slave. You get a tiger.
You get a tiger. That would be a really funny skit that you'll never see on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, right.
Oprah just fucking doling out slaves.
Actually, that would make sense for them. That would score them a lot of. And then actually, now I think about it wouldn't. But Britisher, you have to watch out about making those kinds of videos because I can already sense Diane Abbott rumbling, up your windowsill, just kind of like, you what?
The fame of Diane Abbott has already reached the shores of Newfoundland, has it?
I tend to immerse myself in English politics because I'm a bit of an old Tory, but not in the corrupt,
Well,
sense.
I think the one thing that you should try and find once, I don't know if it's on YouTube, I could imagine it might be, I don't know, is Diane Abbott used to be a regular on a program called This Week.
I've seen
in which she sat on a sofa next to Michael Portillo, and she was, the presenter was Andrew Neil. But there is a little Achilles heel of Diane Abbott's, which is anything pornographic. She absolutely hates. I mean, at a level that can only be described as pathological, she hates page 3. These topless girls in newspapers.
They still do there?
Sorry.
No, I was just asking, do they still do those there?
Well, the Sun newspaper, which had the most famous one, has finished doing it now. But I think there are still 1 or 2 newspapers that do it. But in this case, it was so funny because, of course, one of the guests that was brought on turned out to be a former glamour model. And, they bring on a guest to talk about this or that subject. Now, this woman wasn't here, I think, to talk about page 3 or whatever, but just her existence was kind of a red rag to a bull. And Diane Abbott just lost it to the point that Michael Portillo sitting next to her, just for a moment the camera caught him and you could just see his eyes rolling and he was just looking up at the ceiling going, oh God, here we go, And she just went on an absolute bender. And Andrew Neil needed to keep asking her to please stop heckling the guest. I mean, it must have been 10 minutes or so. I mean, this is a political program, if you know what I mean. And just for 10 minutes out of this half-hour program, this woman just went berserk. And it was just, I can only imagine that afterwards someone must have taken her aside and said, look, I'm sorry, but if you do that again, we can't have you back.
Yeah, really.
But it kind of shows that, if her buttons are pressed, she loses all rationality.
But I mean, it's kind of the same for a lot of the Labour Party. I mean, Comrade McDonnell is another interesting character that I the laughs keep on coming with him. Jeremy Corbyn is just another massive joke. If he ever gets elected, I lose faith, but I seriously doubt it. And it's just a ridiculous show. But I mean, Diane Abbott is probably I have to be honest, she's probably the stupidest politician I've ever heard, and I've been around politics. I've been involved on enough of it.
There is somebody who actually supersedes Diane Abbott in stupidity.
Jess Phillips.
He's actually recently retired from Parliament. That doesn't mean he's left politics. He's now become the mayor of Greater Manchester. He is Andy Burnham. He was under Gordon Brown. He was actually head of the NHS. He was the health secretary. Just look at the man, and you can see this kind of vacant look in his eyes. That is not a lot behind the eyeballs, if you know what I mean.
My great uncle met him and a couple other politicians at a conservative meeting in Lincoln once, and literally said he was the most empty-headed chap he's ever met in his life. And he also, what did he say? I think he tried to take a fumble at Theresa May, if I'm not mistaken. And he stopped in the middle of it, and he's just like, I can't do it. And I asked him, I said, why? And he's just like, he's like, Maggie had thighs, Tessie doesn't. And he just wandered off again to get wasted. And
I wouldn't be overly surprised at that. No, he is the one whom I would refer to as the dumbest politician in British politics at the moment. How he ever managed to get to where he is today, I just do not know. But he was a Labour leadership contender at some point. And you just thought, well, I'm sorry, but Jeremy Corbyn is something. But at least Jeremy Corbyn can, you can sense that he might have some strange ideas, but at least there is actually some mechanism that functions within the skull, so to speak, if you know what I mean. Whereas if you listen to Andy Burnham, you really begin to wonder: is it a cassette recording playing inside?
Well, you do, and I hate to, I know we're gone on to a little bit of a British rant here, but in my own provincial legislature, the Newfoundland House of Assembly, there's currently this massive bickering, and Nachi's heard me talk about this tons of times before. Remember, Nachi, that ridiculous $10 billion hydro dam that we can't seem to get rid of?
Yeah. What was that guy's name again?
Dwight Ball.
Not Dwight Ball, right?
Yeah, well, he didn't start it, but he's going to finish it, and then we're going to boot him out, hopefully. But every time they'll start talking about, why the province is... I mean, we have 500,000 people on this massive island. We owe, I think it's around $15 to $16 billion in debt, and that's ever increasing every day. And we are celebrating the fact that instead of owing $1 billion this year, we only owe $800 million on the deficit. So we're clapping our hands in glee at this for some weird reason. And every time we try to say something, we're like, well, listen, what are you doing about the deficit? Well, we tried, but you see, those damn Tories a couple of years ago when they were in power, they ruined everything, and we're just trying to get back on the way forward. Okay. Well, how do you do it? Well, the Tories did something, and now and this, and they just ramble on about the Tories.
I didn't know that Nicola Sturgeon had relatives who were active in Canadian politics.
You were in no, Britisher. I'm quite sorry, old chap. We're not really Canadian. I'm sorry. We're only recent additions to this confederation. We've only been a part of Canada since '49. But and I say this because I'm looking at my grandfather's scroll of honor from the war, who served in the Royal Navy, and it still says Dominion. But so we are recent additions, but yes, we have our own vapid group of
yes, but the
sycophants and toadies.
The technique of always pointing to the Conservatives and basically saying, "Oh well, it's the central government that is doing this, and they've ruined everything," is almost verbatim what we get from the Scottish National Party in way up north.
You do. I agree with you, and it doesn't make any sense because, and if you even listen to Canadian Parliament, you hear Justin Trudeau open his mouth on anything, and it's either one of the three buzzwords: diversity, Stephen Harper, or privilege. Something like that. He'll ramble on because the finance minister got into a bit of a scandal, and every time the Tories would even mention it, instead of saying, "Listen, I'm going to do this to prevent the conflict of interests and such," it was, "Come on outside of Parliament and say these accusations, and I'm going to use my big lawyers on West Street there to sue the living crap out of you because I'm a rich white liberal." And I can do this. And he was trying to bait them, and liberals are terrible at baiting people. They're just not good at it. It's just like memes. They're just bloody awful at memes. And the Tories would just hang out in the Parliament and literally, forgive me for saying so, talk shit for all the question period.
What is it? If we can try and sort of bring it back a little, because I think the two of us are nerding out a little, and the rest, the other two are.
I have no idea about British politics.
What is it regarding the memes? Because when you actually mention that the left can't meme, some people on the left can get seriously triggered about that.
Oh, I can tell you.
Are we actually agreed that they just cannot do it? That there is something inherent to to left-wing politics that just doesn't allow them to create effective memes.
Well, they can't take a situation and see the sarcasm in it or the humor in it, because everything is so fucking serious.
Well, I mean, in their defense, I have seen some good memes regarding Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, of course, Donald Trump.
Yeah,
well, he makes it easy.
He does. But I mean, like I've moved on to Peruvian memes. I think I've sent Nachi a couple of my works.
There is such a thing as Peruvian memes.
If you follow,
they're weird.
If you DM me, Britisher, I will send you some of my work. I've been farming the memes quite well, because there's recently, and I've mentioned this earlier on the stream, there's a president of Peru who was just pardoned in exchange for
Fujimori. Yes, Mr. Fujimori,
yes.
isn't it?
Yes, quite an interesting chap. I met his daughter actually in Lima a while back. That was a interesting conversation. But the funny thing is that the meme I had was Fujimori sitting there and he's like, "Hey, Abimael Guzman," and I'm sure you've heard of Sendero Luminoso, Shining Path.
Yes.
Well, it was a joke, and I said, "Hey, Abimael," he's like, "What? What's black and white and still in prison?" And he goes, "What? You." And it's just him laughing. And then Guzman, like with his fist raised in the cell, because when he was captured, they put him in this little box and showed him off to the world in the little, traditional convict outfit. And I made this meme, and I'll have to send it towards you. But it is quite the one. But the left just can't meme. They can't really do much anymore. And by the way, I'm disappointed that Fujimori wasn't on your top trumps.
Well, I'm just remembered when you say, they do that thing that they like doing in South and Middle American countries of kind of showing off their latest catch and showing the villain they've caught in a nice prison outfit. Because didn't they do that with El Chapo?
They did.
And then he kind of tunneled his way out, and then they had to do it again, and he got out again somehow, and then they had to repeat it again.
Hey, sorry, guys, I'm just going to interrupt for a second. Sorry. I'm going to cut out, guys. Thanks, Nachi. It was a lot of fun. Ernest, it was great to meet you. And is it the Britisher?
It's the Britisher, yes.
Britisher, it was great talking with you, too. So you all have a great night.
A very interesting avatar, by the way.
Thank you.
But Happy New Year, by the way, man.
But and Nachi, I'm sorry if I have rambled on too much, and I also apologize, Britisher.
No problem.
But I'm sorry. Go on.
Yeah. No. Sorry, if you were about to say something, please go ahead.
No, I was actually just reading a book. Funny thing is about Fujimori. It was criminal governance or corruption is power. Criminal governance in the Fujimori era, and I'm just thinking to myself, they're not going to let him out of prison. And then a week later, they let him out of prison. And the whole Peruvian political sphere is freaking out. You've got people who are Fujimoristas. They're jumping up and down the streets in joy. And then you've got the left who, ironically, helped get him out of prison by abstaining to vote against Pablo Pedro Kaczynski's impeachment, which gave the Popular Force political party the ability to influence certain decisions, shall we say, which caused the release of Fujimori and will cause the downfall of his daughter and the rise of his son.
Well, yes, but when it comes to these, when it comes to these leftovers from the past, let's put it like that. I mean, the world has always a bit of a problem with them. I mean, what do you do with these people? I mean, the person I would point to, for example, would be Honecker. Are either of you gentlemen familiar with who that is?
The former East German chancellor.
Yes. So basically, he was the communist leader of Eastern Germany, and I mean, it was when you hear some of the examples, it was a terrifying regime. But Helmut Kohl clearly pretty much came to some kind of personal understanding, as in, look, you just stand aside, you let the process go on, and then we'll get you out of here. And he was just, he was sent off somewhere to South America, where the Germans have history of exporting some of their ne'er-do-wells. But
mostly in Argentina.
But what do you otherwise do with these people? Because you can lock them up, but what, for an example, do you then set to any other person of that ilk who could perhaps resign in future? What you would be telling that person is, don't resign, fight to the bitter end. However many people it kills, don't let go of power. Because if they can, they'll lock you up.
It is, but Fujimori, for example, is a very curious case. I mean, there's a lot of people who hate him, and there's a lot of people who love him still. I mean,
he's a sort of to one part he's the villain, to the other side he's the hero. Yes,
and he is. And I mean, there's still people who worship. And the funny thing is, and I've never understood this, is that they call him the El Chino, and yet he's Japanese. Which, if it was me, I mean, usually I've met a few Japanese people. If you call them Chinese, they get pretty upset. But he seems to take it with a badge of honor. But I'm actually heading back to Lima, hopefully in a few more months, and I'm going to be involved in a few political things here and there if I can, hopefully. But Fujimori, there's people like I said, people hate him, and I've got friends who, if I say, I like Fujimori, I get a lot of alcohol and chicken. So it's kind of weird. But funny thing is, if you mention his daughter, everyone rolls their eyes and can't stand her. And just, that's why she's lost, every election she's run against, and all her opponents are going to prison.
I can well imagine that can be the case, because whatever the actual setting, whichever country it is, you may have a person who becomes some kind of almost iconic figure, whether it then later is seen as a figure of, villainy or heroism. But you then afterwards get the heir, so to speak, the person who shares a name, but who doesn't really, who hasn't fought her or his own way to the top.
Trudeau.
They basically they inherit it.
It's Pierre Trudeau, or Justin Trudeau. It's the exact same thing. Because when he first got in, and I regret to admit that I helped to get the Liberals in around here, something that I will never, ever do again. Trudeau came about and said, listen, we're going to legalize marijuana. I'm going to make my legacy better than my father's, who was not that great himself, but still better than most of the idiots we've had in charge. But he came in and he's like, we're going to legalize marijuana. We're going to do electoral reform. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. He gets in. Electoral reform comes up. That might jeopardize how many seats I have in Parliament. Bugger that. Let's send Mariam Monsef to be in charge of this. And turned out Mariam Monsef, if you look her up, lied on her immigration forms, said she was born in Afghanistan and therefore a refugee. Actually was born in Iran, and became a bit of a scandal. And they put her in charge of democratic reform, which fizzled out, as Nachi says, like a terrible fart. And so Trudeau just said at the end, he's like, no, we can't do this reform right now. Right-wing people with scary opinions who also happen to be women might get in charge. And he pretty much said this because there was a woman called Kelly Leitch who was running for the Conservative leadership, and she had this thing called the Canadian Values Charter. And it scared people because one of the things, and Britisher, you'll be shocked to hear this, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever been told as a value. Hard work. That was literally written there, was like hard work as a value. And there's people from the New Democratic Party, which is the Labour Party on steroids, and the Liberals, and they're screaming, that's racist, that's discriminating. You're saying that you have to be Canadian to work hard. For some strange reason, I don't know how it spiraled out into that, but she lost. But he used her as an excuse as why we couldn't let even an extra party into Parliament to disrupt the old boys' club, to, you know what I mean, take away their balance, as it were, and cause a Theresa May DUP situation. So he was terrified about that. And then I'm sure you've heard he's going to legalize marijuana. Nachi, you've heard that one too. We're going to legalize the weed.
That's how they always get in there. They always get in with the legalizing marijuana. That's where Bernie Sanders almost had me in the beginning. You know,
but they changed their minds on that one just last month. They said we're not prepared to legalize marijuana yet. It screwed up the stock market because all the cannabis companies that were preparing for July 1st lost a lot of money. And so Trudeau just said, listen, I made a mistake. I'm going to smile. Here's a selfie. I'm going to hug this small brown orphan for 5 or 10 minutes, and you will all forget this ever happened. And I'm going to go hang out with, what's her name, Emma Watson, and shout slogans. Have a nice day. And we don't know when it's going to be legalized. It might be 2018. It might be 2019. It might be just before the next election. But
well, do you think he can politically survive it if he doesn't legalize it?
Yes, because he's considered young. He's considered hip. If not him, it's going to be the leader of the NDP, Mr. Jagmeet Singh, who is, imagine Justin Trudeau with suspenders and a turban. I'm not kidding.
I hate to have to ask this, but do they have term limits on the prime ministers over there? Or?
No, it's the British system as well. The lovely Westminster. You can run as many times as you want and be as absolutely vapid as you choose.
I'll just step away for a minute. I'll be right back.
Actually, I'm going to have to wrap this up actually because we got we gotta go to sleep at 11.
Yeah,
but dude, thanks for jumping in, Britisher man. It was great to catch up with you.
Always happy to catch up with Nachi Free.
No, I'll DM you about or PM you or Twitter you the Twitter private messenger thing about a couple of ideas that I had to see if you wanted to do some one-on-one streams on your channel or mine, whichever one.
Yeah, I'm sure we can do something.
Yeah, I was just going to say right quick, I'm sorry. I don't take these opportunities lightly. Britisher, I'm a big fan, by the way.
Oh, cheers.
I always loved the week that was. And I'd love to do something with you sometime. Nachi can clarify me. I do a pretty good political podcast, me and my friend Lenny.
Yeah, he does.
But I'd love to have a chat with you sometime or shoot me up on Twitter and, have a chat.
Okay, so we're bringing this to an end, then, are we?
Indeed.
Yeah, well, I got 2 minutes. Sorry, I didn't even want it to go this long, but it was interesting to hear the amount of similarities between British and Canadian politics. Just beginning with the Tory party, you know.
It does. It
was also an interesting experience to go this long on a live stream with Nachi Free without him having mentioned the word Castro so far.
Oh well,
you missed it at the beginning. And of all of the things I had to tie it into, I tied it into the Disney movie Coco. So I still got it.
Oh well, there's a segue.
Well, I must run, chaps. The moggy, as they say here, is getting sick on the floor. Lovely cats. Cheerio, then, everyone. Have a good night.
Take good care. See you out.
Happy New Year to you guys, man. And thanks again for joining, man.
Anytime.
Okay. Cheers.
Nice to meet you, Britisher.
Later.
See you out.
Bye.
And with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you all, 6 people, for watching, and however many other people end up watching this later on. I really do appreciate the patrons. I appreciate the subscribers, and I especially appreciate the viewers. Happy New Year to everybody. Oh, that was a terrible ending. Anyway, fuck it. I'm ending it right now. Good. Hold on. If you're sticking around, hold on a second.